During a trip down the slowly flowing Dnister River, you will have the opportunity to go deep into the wilderness and see a picturesque canyon. It is known for its fantastic panoramic views from high steep banks of the river and its enchanting fog in the early morning hours. The canyon is graced with silver waterfalls and travertine cliffs that hang over the water. The caves and grottos in which hermits and ascetic monks lived in ancient times and sought privacy give the bank of the river an amazing secrecy. Indeed, they give the impression that there are no souls to be found hundreds of kilometers away. A 20-minute walk down along the flow of the Ukrainian River, we come upon the natural boundary of the hermit. This is how the local residents named this paradise. Descending to the river, we can see an amazing spectacle. There is a huge cob hanging from the cliff, and water resembling teardrops are cascading down the rocks. Though the waterfall is not all water and is barely 5 meters in height, its value lies in its unusual form. In these parts, particularly in the Buchansky County, there is more than one such waterfall, and they are called the Maiden's Tears. Here we see the waterfall. There are new formations in the waterfall. These totally young geological formations are called travertine rocks. They are formed in this way. As a rule, they only form there where water flows, seen as it contains calcium and salts. Moss grows in a damp environment and is sipped with calcium salts. This is how they begin to harden, and then travertine rocks formed. Grains are formed in carbonites over millions of years, much earlier than such unimaginable sculptural statues will appear. Thanks to the constant humidity, the rock is covered with an emerald velvet carpet of moss. Sipped with salts, it is cemented and forms a porous and non-uniform surface. The water does not wet the rock, but on the contrary builds it up and creates an unusual picture. Young travertines, from which many small brooks of moss flow, formed a miniature waterfall. Scholars say that such a wonder of nature appears only in the valleys of canyons, where the temperature regime is suitable. Folk wisdom, as a rule, does not overlook such secret places and associates them with magic and supernatural forces. This is how legends appear. One such legend is that in these parts an evil witch once lived, who kidnapped some girls and closed them in a dungeon. They say there were so many kidnapped beauties and their misery was so inconsolable that a waterfall was formed from their tears. Nearby there are magical caves of a hermit monk. This is why this place is considered holy. In the 1930s, residents of the village of Ustye sometimes saw this elder when he came to buy some food products. They say that the monk spent most of his time praying in his cell. We are in the cave of a hermit in Urochishe, which is called Vidludnik, meaning hermit. From 1929 to 1939, an ascetic monk named Father Mihailo lived in this cave. He wore homespun clothing and walked barefoot all year round. The monk found comfort in a small and cold cell that was created by nature. This small cave inside this limestone rock became his shelter. In this cave there was a wall that was 3 meters high, 4 meters wide, and 6 meters deep. The monk laid a bed of straw and hay and slept on it. He ate what he could find here or there, and the village folk that knew him provided him with food. He attended church masses in the neighboring village Ustechko, which is a few kilometers from here. People made a pallet of wooden planks especially for him, so that he could warm his feet instead of standing on stone-cold floor during the winter. They say that he atoned for his sins for the death of his relative, whom he seemingly killed with his own hands. In 1939, he crossed the Dnister River near the village of Potochishe. Then he went through a dense forest around the village of Hripova. Ever since, his fate remains an unsolved mystery. Opposite the cave, there is a wellspring. They say that at one time, there was an appearance of the Mother of God, who gave this spring curative and spiritual properties. From that time, people regularly come to this spring to improve their health. The spring water has a unique curative effect. In particular, it helps people that have problems with their eyesight. There are many such places on the territory of the Dnister Canyon National Reserve Park that heal not only the body, but also the soul. One of these places speaks for itself, the village of Monastyrok. It is renowned for its amazing history and picturesque panoramas of the canyon. Initially, this populated settlement was called Mizhiria, as it is situated between the high banks of the Dnister River, not far from the Kaspersky water reservoir. Back in the Middle Ages, a monastery was built on these cliffs. A temple was built right on the cliffs, especially for monks, who abandoned their secular life and decided to settle in remote areas along the Dnister and Siret rivers. The cave on the rocky cliff was naturally formed. The hollows were formed due to weathering and erosion. The inaccessible grottos, which were hidden from people, were a perfect place for monks who wanted to live in seclusion others. Inside this rock, there was a small grotto that these monks chose as their abode. This was most likely in the 14th to 15th centuries. Judging from the traces of their processing of stone, the monks brought this place to perfection. There they built an altar. The monks wanted this temple to be more spacious, so they decided to expand it. The temple was partially covered with wood. The floor was also made of wood, and here to the left we can see the entrance. The monks decided to elaborate and improve the external appearance of this so-called sanctuary or refuge. The secret entrance into the cave led to the cliff over the river. During the invasions of the Tatar-Mongol and Ottoman armies, it was a very safe and reliable place of refuge. Judging from the name of the cave, Pagan, one can presuppose that this place was a pre-Christian idol-worshipping sanctuary. The entrance to the temple ostensibly protects the huge sacrificial stone, which is approximately 6 meters in length. Since those times, a separate artifact, which is a memorial to stone architecture, has been preserved to this day. The monks pulled it out and mounted it on 3 stone pillars. This is the so-called altar. In folklore, it is associated with different legends, but it is obvious that this was a man-made creation. The table stone was often called the Rock of Dovbush. Local residents recount that the renowned folkloric avenger Olexa Dovbush lifted the table stone from the bottom of the canyon of the Siret River and placed it right in the monastery. According to historic accounts, Dovbush was truly in these regions. As it pertains to the supernatural displacements, this is nothing but a beautiful myth. By the way, the next academic confirmation is no less fantastic. As it turned out, by its structure, this stone was fundamentally different from local species. There is even a supposition that a dolmen is identical to species on Mount Sinai. This gives grounds for the boldest hypothesis about the origin of the altar, and fully determined facts justify the time when the altar was put in place. Under each of these 3 stones embedded coins were found, which is testimony to the approximate time when the altar was built. If to look attentively from the western side of the stone, one can see several words in the Old Slavonic language. In light of this, the stone played a significant role in the religious rites of ancient inhabitants of this monastery. Next to the small labyrinths of the rock monastery, a cult edifice of the 18th century was preserved. The temple was built in 1560 on the site of a wooden church that burned down. It was named in honor of the only icon of the Uspenska Mother of God. The temple, which is just in the past today, serves as a refuge for inhabitants that need their privacy, is a part of this existing monastery. And here we see the shores of the Dnister River in their full glory. A true paradise for hermits. In one or another season of the year, around 200 species of birds fall into the camera eye of ornithologists in the picturesque areas of the Podilian Toftree. Traditionally, expert ornithologists observe their feathered friends from the elevations along the valley of the river. We call these elevations in the valley of the Muksha River its main. From this point, a panoramic view opens up, which is why it is convenient for bird watching. They fly right along the valley of the river, as for them it is one of the natural reference points. There we can see the birds at eye level. In October, the month of migration, we can see the largest number of bird species flying south. Those which nested here will fly to warmer climates. The others, on the contrary, will return from northern regions for winter hibernation. Right now we can observe the flight of catbirds or ouzels. Predatory birds, titmouse, herons and geese are also quite actively in flight. In one day one sees half of the birds in the ornithological directory of Ukraine. In other words, this gives the opportunity for a short period of time to see a large number of bird species. When you constantly observe how birds live, you can easily see that they differ not only in the external features of their appearance, but also in the distinctive features of their behavior. We can observe the seasonal phenomena in the life of birds, in particular the aviafauna. When birds carry seeds or fruits, now a jay is carrying acorns, hides them in moss, and often leaves them there for keeps. The fact is that the bird simply forgot where it left its reserves. Then later oak trees begin to grow in those places. Now is the time for mating games for crocs. They are nested quite early, which is why they seek a partner as early as October. It is not only bird experts, but also simply naturalists attracted to the science of ornithology that do not miss this moment. On the exact same day every year, thousands of bird watchers look up into the skies through binoculars to observe the flight of their feathered friends. By the flight trajectory, the color and the form of their bodies, they determine how the bird fell into their field of vision. Besides binoculars and a telescope, a special guidebook for determining distinctive features of birds comes in handy for the avid bird watcher. This is how young naturalists learn how to note what is happening in the natural habitat. Who knows, maybe for some of them such a form of entertainment will become a matter of life. But in this case, they will also have to have an ear for music. An ornithologist should know the voice of a bird. When we do count the number of birds, it is very important to know how to recognize them by their voice, differentiate a wedding song and count them by the voices they sound. Every male selects their territory, where it can attract a female by song. By the number of them on this territory, we determine how many birds chose their place for multiplying. In the end, ornithologists can presuppose by how much the population of a particular species of a bird will create all conditions for multiplication and preservation of our feathered friends. The natural habitat of these localities and the distinctive features of the landscape were always attractive for birds soaring through the skies. One can observe such a vibrant picture and appreciate the animal kingdom of the Podilsky Toftree in all its diversity together with us. Our journey into the amazing world of undiscovered Ukraine continues.